Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Let your arms go heavy, your breath slow. And as you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing what time it is, where you are, and what city or village you're listening from. It's love to know. And if you'd like more quiet stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe so they gently appear when you need them most. Now, let's begin. You lie still, and under you, the earth is not. Beneath the soft weight of your body, beneath the cool floor or the grass or the old wood of your home, there is something that never stops. Something ancient, something so alive that its silence hums like a breath held for centuries. The ground beneath you, that still, firm, and reliable ground, is not still, not really, not ever, because soil breathes quietly, slowly, but it does. You don't hear it. You aren't meant to. Its rhythm doesn't match the pace of your day or the ticking of your clock. It is older than your heartbeat and slower than your thoughts, but it moves, it pulses, teases, it rearranges, and within every handful of it, there are more lives than stars you can see on the clearest night. You might call it dirt. You might wash it off your hands without thinking. But soil is not waste. It is not just the afterlife of fallen leaves or rotted wood. Soil is a body of its own, a layered skin of the earth, a living quilt stitched from decay and birth, carrying the memory of forests long vanished and feeding the roots of those still rising. Breathe in, gently, and imagine the breath that rises with you, not from lungs, but from lung. It begins with the surface, the fragile top few inches where sunlight still kisses the edge of life. Here, the soil is busy, crumbly, rich, textured like damp bread. This is the place of leaf litter, of decomposing twigs, of the first fall of rain. In forest, it's where squirrels bury acorns and forget them, where moss carpets slowly spread like sleepy fingers. But go deeper, just beneath that soft layer, there is another world. One darker, cooler, denser, a place where light never reaches. But life continues all the same. It is not silent here. It is just quiet in a way your ears aren't built for. The sound is microbial vibrations of birth, of transformation, of exchange. It's the sound of nitrogen being fixed, of carbon chains being broken, of hydrogen swapping places like dance partners in a long-forgotten waltz. And in this world, everything is doing something. Nothing is ever truly still. Trillions upon trillions of bacteria move through water films thinner than a strand of hair. Fungi stretch their filaments in slow, persistent arcs, like thoughts traveling through dream. Protozoa hunt, ever so gently, consuming and transforming the builders and recyclers around them. Nematodes, worm-like and strange, twist through soil pores, shaping the rhythm of life without knowing they do. Even the stones play their part. Minerals dissolve at a pace slower than rainfall, releasing tiny bursts of nutrients, calcium, magnesium, potassium, that will one day find their way into the heartwood of a tree. And the tree will grow and one day fall and return again. There is no waste here, no permanent loss. Just cycles, cycles of what was, becoming what is, becoming what will be. And yet, from above, it looks still. You walk over this complexity every day, across forest floors, across city sidewalks, across fields and gardens and hills. And unless it crumbles beneath your foot or mud clings to your shoe, you likely don't notice it at all. But that quiet underfoot is not emptiness. It is cooperation. It is breath. Think of a tree, any tree. Perhaps when you passed today, you likely noticed its height, the reach of its limbs, the dappling of its leaves. You may have paused in its shade, or watched a bird flit through its branches. But you did not see its roots. You certainly didn't see the soil those roots rest in, the countless organisms working tirelessly to make that tree's life possible. That tree breathes because the soil breathes. Its roots extend, not just for anchoring, but for tasting, feeling, connecting. They release sugars, sweet exudates that summon bacteria to their sides. In return, those bacteria unlock nutrients from the soil's stores: phosphorus, iron, zinc, tiny treasures buried in silence. This isn't generosity. It's partnership. The forest does not grow alone. The ground is not just a platform. It is a participant. It holds memory, too. Memory that does not look like yours. The soil remembers fire, drought, the weight of hoof and foot and wheel. It remembers flood and recovery. It remembers what grew and what died, what lived and what lingered, and it responds not with thought, but with adaptation. Microbial communities shift in composition after each season, each stress. Some vanish, some thrive, some hide deep until the time is right to rise again. And through it all, the soil breathes, not with lungs, but with chemical exchange. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, just like you. And when you breathe, when your chest rises and falls, you are connected to it, because the carbon you exhale feeds the roots of grass. That grass grows, it falls, it decays, it becomes soil. That soil feeds microbes. As microbes release nutrients, the nutrients rise into another plant. The plant is eaten, and somewhere, someday, you breathe again. You are never separate from the ground that breathes beneath you. And yet, soil is shy. It does not announce itself with flourish. It does not rise to meet your eyes or beg for recognition. It is humble, even as it builds the world. It is humble, even as it feeds the forest, the field, the food you eat. It does not need your praise, but it does need your pause, your attention, your respect, because it can be hurt. Strip the trees, remove the cover, plow too deeply, let chemicals bleed into the loam. The soil forgets how to breathe. Its texture collapses, its microbes dwindle, its breath slows to a whisper, then a gasp, then a silence too deep to mend. What once grew there, tall, lush, resilient, falters, but soil can forgive. With time, with rest, with care, there are forests regrowing where war once burned, meadows reborn on land once poisoned, gardens springing from rubble, and always it begins below. In the darkness, in the quiet, in the breath of 1,000 unseen lives returning. Even now, under your feet, something is beginning. It may be the slow rebuilding of balance, or the gentle stir of a bacterium preparing to divide. It may be the curl of a rootlet searching for new mineral taste. It may be nothing you can measure, but everything that matters. And tonight, as you lie still and the world softens around you, imagine the soil beneath your body, perhaps 2 floors down, perhaps just inches below, doing its ancient work, not for glory, not for praise, because that is what it does. That is what it has always done. It is not empty. It is not silent. It is not still. The ground that breathes is breathing still, and as your breath slows, you might begin to feel it, the pull of connection, the soft hum of life below, the comfort of knowing that even in darkness, even in decay, even in the quietest places, something is always living, always moving, always beginning again. And as we go deeper, past the fallen leaf, past the surface route, past the worms in stone and shadow, we begin to meet them, the first decomposers, the recyclers of life, the quiet feeders of the world. What happens when the world's quietest workers go unnoticed? You hold a spoon in your hand, and inside it, if you scooped it from the forest floor, or a rich garden bed, or the earth just after rain, is more life than you could ever see. Not hundreds, not thousands, but billions. A single teaspoon of living soil can contain more organisms than there are people on this planet. It's tiny, unseen lives, bacteria, archaea, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, moving, eating, communicating, but not loudly, not all at once. They are not fireworks. They are embers, constant, patient, persistent, and without them, the forest would fall silent. It's easy to overlook them. They don't rise to meet your gaze. They don't burst through the soil like flowers or glow with colors like birds in the canopy. They don't sing, but they do something deeper, something slower. Okay. They build the foundation on which every forest stands. They are the invisible engineers of everything that grows. Take the bacteria, the smallest of all. They exist in numbers so vast they defy comprehension. In a single gram of soil, you may find tens of thousands of bacterial species, most of which still have no name. They are not all the same. Some prefer acidic places, others thrive in the cold. Some love the wetness of clay, others the looseness of sand. But wherever they live, they do not sit idle. They break things down. Complex carbohydrates, woody lignins, fats, proteins, these are their meals. But digestion is only the beginning. As they eat, they transform. They unlock nutrients. They build molecules. They change the chemistry of the soil. They make it alive. And when bacteria die, as all things do, their bodies become food for others. Their proteins are torn apart by fungi. Their DNA dissolves into the soup of the soil. Nothing is wasted, not even death. They form communities, too. Biofilms, layers of bacteria clinging together, encased in a sticky gel of their own making. These films protect them. They help bacteria communicate, share resources, resist stress. A biofilm on a root surface might include hundreds of species, all interacting, all influencing the health of the plant above. There is cooperation here, and competition. Bacteria jostle for space and food. They release chemical signals, quorum-sensing molecules that tell others when it's time to grow, to move, to stop. It is not war. It is conversation, a chemical dialogue without words. And then, there are the actinobacteria. You may not know their name, but you know their smell. That earthy scent after rain. The aroma of a garden just watered. That comes from jasmine, a compound released by actinobacteria when soil is disturbed. It's a scent that has followed humans through time, across fields, through forests, and the turning of compost piles. A scent of memory, scent of life. But bacteria do more than digest and perfume the earth. Some are builders. They help form soil structure, gluing particles together with their sticky secretions. These create stable clumps called aggregates, which give soil its crumbly feel. These aggregates are vital. They hold water. They provide space for roots. They create homes for other microbes. Others are defenders. They release antibiotics, natural compounds that inhibit fungal invaders, harmful bacteria, even some pests. These antibiotics don't just protect themselves. They protect the plants nearby. In doing so, they become part of the forest's immune system. Then, there are nitrogen fixers. These are special. Plants need nitrogen. It forms the backbone of proteins, the structure of DNA, the very essence of chlorophyll. But atmospheric nitrogen is locked away, unusable in its raw form. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria break that lock. They live in nodules on the roots of legumes, peas, beans, clovers, or freely in the soil. They capture nitrogen from the air and convert it into ammonia, a form plants can absorb. Without them, forests would be stunted, crops would fail, and life as we know it would falter. And they do it all without ceremony. No lights, no sounds, no drama, just chemistry. It's quiet miracles. Their presence gives rise to entire food webs. Protozoa eat bacteria. Nematodes eat protozoa. Fungi eat both. Each death releases nutrients. Each exchange reshapes the soil. The balance between predators and prey, between builders and breakers, forms a web as intricate as anything above ground. A web that has no beginning, no center, no end. and yet we rarely see them. Soil scientists, those who study this hidden world, often speak of a microbial dark matter, vast microbial lineages that remain uncultured, unsequenced, unknown. We know they exist by the faint traces of their genes, but we do not know what they do, or what they mean, or how they fit. And perhaps that's okay. Not all mystery needs solving. Some mystery only needs honoring. Soil bacteria have shaped this planet longer than trees have. They were here before roots evolved, before leaves unfurled, before forests stretched toward sky. It was they who first formed the thin crust of soil on barren volcanic rock. It was they who paved the way for plants to walk onto land. It was they who wrote the earliest chapters of life on Earth, in code, in carbon, in silence, and they are still writing every day. Under your feet, when you see a seedling rise, know that 1,000 microbes helped it. When you see a leaf turn yellow, know that bacteria might be starving or stressed below. When you walk through a field, know that every step disturbs a universe, but one that forgives, one that rebuilds, because soil is alive, not just full of life, but alive in itself. It breathes, not with lungs, but through gas exchange. It pulses, not with a heart, but with cycling nutrients. It communicates, not with words, but with signals. It feels change, in pH, in pressure, in the footsteps of deer. It remembers fire, flood, drought, rain, and it heals. If damaged, it dries. If depleted, it slows. But given time and compost and care, it rebuilds. Its microbes multiply. Its fungi return. Structure reforms. Its breath deepens. It may not look like recovery from the outside, but inside, a symphony is tuning again. You may never see this, but you can sense it in the smell after rain, in the richness of humus beneath your nails, in the slow, certain rise of green dot. And as you lie back, eyes heavy, body still, you can imagine it, a tiny bacterial world, humming softly, working slowly, unnoticed yet essential. A world that does not need your attention to survive, but thrives more fully when it has it. And perhaps the greatest gift we can offer the soil is simply to notice, to pause, to respect, to listen, because the workers of the earth are not the loud ones. They are the invisible ones. And next, we go deeper into their partners, the quiet recyclers, the first decomposers, who take what has fallen and turn it into new life. How many endings in life are actually beginnings in disguise? A single leaf lets go. It twists gently, loosened by time or wind or its own quiet clock. The stem breaks with no sound. The fall is slow, a fluttering descent toward soil, toward stillness, toward what looks from above like an end. But the underworld of roots and microbes, the story is only beginning. The forest floor is not a graveyard for leaves. It is a cradle for transformation. The fallen is not forgotten. It is greeted, welcomed by an ancient system designed not for disposal, but for renewal. This is the realm of the decomposers. They do not shout, they do not rush, but they are always ready when organic matter touches the soil leaf, twig, fruit, feather, dunk. It becomes part of a quiet economy. Nothing is thrown away. Everything is currency, and the first to arrive are not the largest creatures, but the smallest. Fungi, with their thin white threads, known as hyphae, extend like fingers into the fallen leaf. Some of these fungi have waited all season for this, nestled in the soil, dormant until the moment something dead arrives. They are saprotrophs, fungi who feed on decay. They do not eat with mouths. They digest outwardly. They release enzymes, complex chemical keys that dissolve the leaf's cellulose, its lignin, its tough green skin. What was once firm becomes soft. What was once whole begins to blur. And in this dissolving, nutrients are released. Carbon becomes carbon dioxide. Nitrogen becomes ammonium. Phosphorus becomes available again to the roots waiting below. What was trapped in leaf tissue becomes part of the soil's shared breath. And, alongside the fungi, the bacteria return. Some specialize in the sugars. Others take on the harder work, breaking down complex chains like chitin or hemicellulose. It is teamwork, though none of them coordinate by voice. They respond to molecules. They detect shifts in chemistry. They follow trails in scent and signal. Together, they feast, and as they do, they create heat. If you've ever touched the center of a compost pile, you know this. Decomposition is not cold. It is active, alive. Microbes working in concert generate warmth, enough to steam in the morning air. In forests, this warmth rises invisibly from layers of decay. In prairies, it fuels the cycles that prepare new growth. And all of this, all of it, is life born from what looks like loss. That fallen leaf becomes a city, a temporary one, but bustling. Springtails hop through it. Mites tunnel inside. Nematodes slither between softened veins. Each comes to feed, or hunt, or hide. And each, in turn, leaves droppings, eggs, husks, skin. And when they die, as all do, they become part of the meal. 2. Decomposition is not a single event. It is a cascade. At first, the soft things go. The sugars, the fats, then the tougher ones, the proteins, the waxes. And last, the hardest lignin, the compound that gives wood its strength, that resists time. This process can take days, weeks, even years, depending on the material, the temperature, the moisture. A feather breaks down differently than bark. A fruit vanishes faster than a pine cone, but all meet the same end, reintegration into soil. And none of this is waste. In fact, the word waste doesn't apply in nature the way it does in human systems. There is no landfill in the forest, no forgotten pile. Everything discarded becomes fuel, structure, story. Even scent plays a role. As microbes break things down, they release volatile organic compounds, VOCs. These give soil its rich smell, compost its earthy temps, but they're more than scent, or signals. Some attract insects, others repel pests. Some even act as antibiotics or growth enhancers for plants. And so, even in decay, there is intelligence. This work, this quiet, necessary work, is old. Fungi were among the first life forms to colonize land. Before flowers, before grasses, before mammals, they prepared the ground, quite literally, everything that came after. And they still do. If decomposition stopped, even for a single season, the forest would choke on its own debris. Leaves would pile up, trunks would rot in place, nutrients would lock away, unreachable. Growth would halt. The system would stall. But a deal is in single quotes, because decay is constant, is sacred. Decays is how the world breathes out to breathe in again, and in this sacred task. Bacteria and fungi are not alone. Larger decomposers help. 2. Earthworms grind and aerate. Beetles chew. Millipedes nibble through bark. Their movements break up material, making it easier for microbes to work. They are co-laborers, each at their scale, and even mammals, like bears or deer, contribute. Their dung, rich in undigested fibers and microbes, becomes a hotbed of decomposition. Their bodies, when they pass, feed entire cycles of life. In nature, death feeds life. There is no other way. And so, you see a leaf fall, or a branch break, or a fruit rot, you can know this. What ends above is beginning below. What appears lost is becoming soil. What seems like the end is a return. Even fire participates in some ecosystems. Fire clears the surface, scorching leaves, consuming branches, but the ash that remains becomes mineral-rich, and beneath the heat, many microbes survive, some even thrive. Fire, too, is a decomposer of sorts, fast, violent, but part of the cycle. In other places, water does the work. Floodplains gather debris from upstream logs, plants, animals, and lay them down in silt. There, in the quiet wetness, anaerobic bacteria begin their slow digestion. Without oxygen, the process shifts. It slows, but it continues. Decomposition has many shapes, but one goal: return carbon to air, return nitrogen to soil, return life to the beginning. And what does this mean for you? Perhaps this: that not all decay is loss, that not all endings are final, that when something in your life breaks down, a belief, a plan, a relationship, it may not be a failure, but a transformation. There is wisdom in what falls apart. There is potential in what softens. And just as bacteria do not question their task, just as fungi dissolve the hard things into nourishment, you too may carry the quiet power of renewal. No fanfare, no rush, just a willingness to let go, to feed what comes next, to be part of the breath between what was and what will be. As you lie still now, eyes heavy, body relaxed, you can picture that fallen leaf, see it resting, see the hyphae reaching, see the bacteria arriving, and know that below you, always, the earth is working, always turning the old into new, always whispering through decay, begin again. And just beyond this chapter, something else stirs in the dark, not falling from above, but growing from below. Tiny root hairs threading into soil, searching for water, for connection, for microbial partnership. What exchanges are happening in the darkness beneath a single step? There is a silence beneath you that is not stillness. It is conversation, slow, chemical, ancient, and at the heart of that conversation, there are root hairs, tiny, delicate extensions of plant roots, barely visible, often overlooked, but among the most essential structures in all of life. They are not loud, they do not bloom, but without them, there is no forest, no field, no flower. Let yourself imagine it. A seed has sprouted. A soft white root begins to grow downward, responding to gravity, moisture, and light, or the lack of it. Soon, that root branches. From its surface, microscopic threads begin to emerge. These are root hairs. They are single cells, thin as a whisper, and their purpose is not to anchor, but to reach. The soil, to them, is not dirt. It is a sea, a dense, textured sea of minerals and microbes, of water droplets and fungal threads, of tiny stones and decaying life. The root hair swims through this slow soup, not with motion, but with chemistry. It sends signals. It listens for feedback. It releases compounds, sugars, amino acids, organic acids into the surrounding soil. This release is not waste. It's invitation. Because in soil, everything is a negotiation. The root cannot reach nitrogen on its own. It cannot digest phosphorus or liberate iron, but there are microbes who can, and they come closer when the root feeds them. This zone, just around each root hair, is called the rhizosphere. It is not just dirt. It is a marketplace, a dinner table, a sacred edge between self and world. Within millimeters of the route, microbial populations surge. Friendly bacteria arrive, drawn by the sugars. Fungi touch the surface, offering their filaments to trade nutrients. Even protozoa and nematodes follow, feeding on the bacteria, releasing more nutrients in the cycle. The root hair is both host and gatekeeper. It lets in some, it resists others. Its cell membrane is selective. Its decisions, though microscopic, shape the life of the entire plant. And it does all this in darkness, in silence, in the space beneath every step you take. Pause here for a moment. Think of the tree, the tall one, the one whose crown catches morning light and whose bark holds decades of memory. That tree depends on these tiny cells, on their reach, their offerings, their choices. Without root hairs, water would be harder to find. Without them, minerals would stay locked in clay. Without them, partnerships with microbes would wither. They may live only a few days, but in that time, they build the foundation for everything above. Their work is invisible, but it is felt in green leaves, in swelling fruits, in forests that breathe back the sky. And the exchanges they facilitate are not always simple. Some bacteria, sensing the plant's signals, begin to form biofilms along the route. They become residents. They offer protection, crowding out pathogens, producing compounds that deter invaders. In return, they feast on root exudates, the sweet fluids released by the plant. It is mutualism, not charity, not conquest. It's quiet cooperation. Other microbes bring more. Some specialize in breaking down complex materials, rocks, dead matter, and releasing nutrients. Others fix nitrogen, converting it from the air into a form the plant can use. In legumes, beans, clover, special bacteria called rhizobia enter root hairs and spark the formation of nodules, little swollen chambers where nitrogen is fixed. It's not a one-time trade. It's a long-term relationship. The plant houses the bacteria, feeds them, and in return, the bacteria feed the plant. But it all begins with the root hair, with its invitation, the soft chemical hello. Fungi respond to, especially mycorrhizal fungi, whose filaments or hyphae extend far beyond the root's own reach. They bring water from distant pores, mine phosphorus from hidden crystals. They send warning signals between trees, but they do not work for free. The plant pays in sugars, in carbon, delivered at the root hair, and so this hair-thin cell becomes a hub of economy, of diplomacy, of trust, and if conditions are harsh, drought, salinity, nutrient-poor soil, root hairs become even more important. Plants grow more of them, longer, thinner, reaching further into uncertainty. This is resilience, not through armor, but through adaptability. And still, it goes unseen, even as we walk, dig, build, pave. The root hairs are at work, reaching, feeding, responding. Their lives are brief, but in that brevity, they carry the work of generations. Some die and are eaten by microbes. Some slough off as the root moves through the soil, but others trigger new growth. Their presence changes the soil chemistry, encouraging more life, more exchange, and they are sensitive to pH, to temperature, to pollutants. Excess nitrogen can burn them. Heavy metals can poison them. Compacted soil can crush them. They ask for little air, moisture, a living soil, and in return, they give everything. Root hairs also help plants feel their surroundings. They detect water gradients. They sense neighboring roots. Participate in complex communication, shaping how the plant responds above ground. Some scientists even believe they influence drought memory. How? A plant remembers hardship and adapts next time. It is not memory like yours, not story, but biochemical pattern. And in soil, pattern is everything. What the root hairs do today shapes how the plant grows tomorrow, how much it blooms, how much it withstands wind, heat, or pest, and how much it shares through its fallen leaves, its dying stems, back to the decomposers to begin the cycle again. You can think of root hairs as breath, not of lungs, but of land. They are the inhale, drawing in water, minerals, messages, and they are the exhale, releasing carbon, sugars, warmth. They connect to life above, to the life below. 18. They translate the needs of the crown into the language of the soil, and they are everywhere, in meadows, in forests, beneath sidewalks. If you let them grow, you may never see one, but you walk above them daily. You eat because they exist. You breathe more freely because they function. They are the fingers of plants, not to grasp, but to touch, to form friendships, to feed a future. And tomorrow, if the root hair dies, another will take its place. This is the humility of soil life. Not permanent, but persistent. And from those root hairs, a gift spreads outward to bacteria, to fungi, to the next ring in the underground chain, to those microbes whose special talent is turning the invisible into nourishment, who give back what the root cannot find alone. Next comes the story of nitrogen fixers, those bacteria who transform the air itself into food for the green world. What transformations do you rely on without ever seeing them happen? Nitrogen is everywhere. It swirls around you with every breath, invisible, abundant, silent. It makes up more than 75% of the air, and yet most life cannot touch it. You cannot use it. Neither can a tree, a sunflower, a blade of grass, a towering pine. They all inhale, but the nitrogen passes by untouched. Because atmospheric nitrogen, the N that floats freely, is locked. It is stable, paired tightly in triple bonds, too strong to be broken by root or leaf, and yet every living cell needs it. Nitrogen is the backbone of DNA, the skeleton of proteins, the quiet architect of growth. So how do forests grow when what they need most surrounds them, unreachable? The answer lies beneath your feet, in ancient relationships, in soft exchanges, in the quiet generosity of bacteria. Some of the oldest partnerships in nature are invisible. They begin when a root hair reaches out and a certain kind of bacterium answers. These are the nitrogen fixers, microbes with a rare ability to take nitrogen gas from the air and convert it into ammonia, a form plants can use. They do not shout their work. They hum it, in darkness, in soil, in rhythm with the roots above, in legumes, beans, lentils, peas, clover. These partnerships become visible. Tiny nodules swell along the roots, shaped like pearls or miniature hearts. Inside each one lives a colony of rhizobium bacteria, safely tucked in by the plant. The root builds the house. The bacteria pay the rent with nitrogen. This is not a transaction, it's a trust. The plant offers sugars made from sunlight. The bacteria use that energy to break the triple bond of atmospheric nitrogen, something almost nothing else can do. They hand the nitrogen back, softened, usable, and life continues. This process is called biological nitrogen fixation, and it powers much of the green world. A single clover in a meadow might fix dozens of milligrams of nitrogen in a season. A whole field of soybeans can replenish a soil exhausted by years of farming. And forests. Forests lean gently on a patchwork of nitrogen fixers, weaving in shrubs, understory plants, microbial webs that feed the canopy above. But not all nitrogen fixers need a host. Some live freely in the soil. Acetobacter, Clostridium, they float between grains of sand, living short lives, converting small breaths of nitrogen into something usable, then dying to feed the next generation. They are not famous. They don't form nodules, but they hold up ecosystems, and in flooded soils, like rice paddies, different fixers take over. Cyanobacteria, blue-green and ancient, drift in water and fix nitrogen in sunlight, turning air into rice, into grain, into the meals of millions. Even mosses, on cold northern soils, coated in frost and quiet, harbor nitrogen-fixing microbes. On the roof of the world, where few things grow tall, they still find a way to feed the land. It is not just about plants. Every animal you've ever seen, every human, owes their protein to these unseen alchemists. You eat nitrogen because bacteria converted it from gas to nourishment somewhere down the line, and the process is fragile. It needs the right temperature, the right pH, enough energy from the host, too much fertilizer, and plants stop feeding their partners. Pollution, soil, compaction, heavy metals, these damage the microbial communities. It's a balance. Too little nitrogen, and growth slows. Too much, and the soil sours, microbes disappear, waterways choke on runoff. That's why these fixers are so important. They offer just enough, just when it's needed. A slow drip, not a flood, and the plant helps decide how much to accept. Roots will feed more sugars to bacteria when nitrogen is scarce. They'll starve the microbes when conditions are rich. It's dynamic, responsive, intelligent. In its own way, even the shape of the nodule changes depending on need. More lobes, more surface area, more exchange, a biological negotiation. And what happens after the plant dies? The fixed nitrogen doesn't vanish. It enters the soil. It becomes part of the decomposing stem. The fallen leaf, the microbial feast beneath it, fertilizes the next generation. It's the grasses that rise the following spring, the trees that slowly add another ring. This is how ecosystems self-renew. Some indigenous farming traditions understood this long before science named it. They planted beans alongside maize, not just for variety, but because the beans nourished the soil. The three sisters, maize, beans, and squash, are not just a meal. They are a microbiological alliance. There are scientists now who try to bring these partnerships to other crops, to coax wheat and corn into similar relationships, to reduce chemical dependence, to restore balance. Some engineer the bacteria, others adjust the plant, but all chase the same ancient wisdom that green things grow better when they are not alone. And the bacteria, they are older than trees, older than flowers, older than soil. As you know it, nitrogen fixation is a gift, passed down from microbial ancestors that lived before oxygen filled the sky. It is a lineage of generosity. Not all life evolved teeth and claws. Some evolved to share, even inside your own body. In your gut, certain microbes echo this work. They don't fix nitrogen, but they break molecules, shape nutrients, feed cells. The pattern repeats. Small life supporting large. And always, it begins in darkness, in the quiet, in places easily forgotten. So next time you walk by a field of clover or a patch of beans, pause. There is a factory beneath the soil, silent, efficient, generous, turning air into life, making the unreachable into dinner, feeding forests without asking for applause. And when that nitrogen passes upward into leaf, into fruit, into seed, it joins the cycle again, eaten, digested, returned, in waste, in death, in compost, and the bacteria wait quietly to begin again, not for glory, but because it is what they do. So much of life is sustained by those who expect nothing in return, by unseen labor beneath the surface, and sometimes it takes centuries for us to notice, to understand, to say thank you. Now we begin too, and as you breathe tonight, surrounded by air rich in nitrogen you cannot use, remember there is someone, somewhere, turning it into life. Tomorrow's forest depends on today's unseen partnership, and beneath the roots, another gift waits not to feed, but to connect, to weave roots into networks, to send memory, warning, and water between trees. What invisible networks support your life without asking for credit? You imagine a forest as a place of tall trunks, branches, and rustling leaves, a space of sun and rain, bird song and breezes. Right. But the forest's truest conversations do not happen in the air. They happen below, beneath the fallen needles and decaying bark, beneath the roots and rocks. A second forest exists. It is not made of trees. It is made of threads, fungal threads, to be precise. Hyphae, long, filamentous strands, so thin they can pass through grains of soil. These threads, when woven together, are called mycelium, and mycelium is everywhere. It is the quiet infrastructure of the earth, and when it meets a tree root, something astonishing happens. They fuse. A mycorrhizal relationship is born, from the Greek, myx, meaning fungus, and rhiza, meaning root, fungus root. Two different lives, becoming one system. The tree offers sugars made from sunlight. The fungus offers minerals, water, protection, and communication. It's not charity. It's symbiosis, a trade, a trust. More than 90% of plants form these fungal relationships. Even ancient ferns and mosses, even grasses and orchids, even towering redwoods and delicate saplings. And once connected, they are no longer isolated individuals. They are part of a network. A forest becomes a web. Picture it like this. A grandmother tree, tall and weathered, stands in a clearing. Her roots reach deep, but they are not alone. Fungal threads stretch from her roots to her children nearby, and beyond them, two other trees, other families, other species. Through these fungal highways, the trees share. When one is thirsty, water moves. When one is wounded, warning signals travel. When one is dying, it sends its remaining nutrients to kin. The mycorrhizal network makes this possible. It is not random. Some fungi prefer certain trees. Some trees prioritize their own offspring. Some messages move faster than others. It is a living internet minus complex, adaptive, ancient dot. And, like the internet, it is often misunderstood. For decades, science saw plants as competitors, each fighting for sunlight, space, survival. But this battleground symphony suggests something. Cute. Collaboration, community. When seedlings grow in rich mycorrhizal soil, they survive better. Even without direct sunlight, they receive sugars through the network. Even in shade, they grow. It's called the nurse tree effect. Older trees, through fungal partners, nurture the young. They do not hoard their strength. They share it. And it isn't only within species. A fir can connect to a birch, a beech to a maple. Information moves across the divide, okay? A message does not care about the badge of its sender. Some trees, especially in mature forests, become hubs. Highly connected nodes, central points in the network. These mother trees form the backbone of underground communication. When they are cut down, the network weakens. Not all fungi are generous. Some hoard, some parasitize, some lie, but the system, overall, leans toward mutual benefit. The survival of the group, not just the individual. And here's where it becomes almost poetic. Some fungi can live for thousands of years. One massive mycelial mat in Oregon spans over 2,000 acres. It is estimated to be 2,500 years old. A single organism, invisible yet immense, ancient yet still growing. A whisper in the dirt that stretches across time. You walk above it, perhaps you have, without knowing. You walked across 1,000-year-old mind in certain conditions. The mycorrhizal network records memory. When a tree is attacked by pests, it alerts its neighbors. They respond by activating defenses, increasing tannins, preparing for assault. If the threat returns, the response is faster. It's like learning, like immunity, stored knowledge in the ground. There is even evidence that the fungal networks prefer balance. They distribute resources, not to the strongest, but to the neediest. A redistribution of wealth through whisper and filament. And when a forest burns or is logged, the fungi do not always die. They wait. Spores hide in the soil. They bide their time. Okay, when the trees return, so do the threads. The connections regrow. The network remembers. Soil scientists speak of fungal legacy, a memory that helps a place heal. It's a pattern that reforms when conditions return. And in farming, when we destroy this web through tilling and chemicals, plants lose their natural allies. Yields fall. Disease spreads. The land forgets how to support itself. But when we restore the fungi through compost, cover crops, minimal disturbance, life returns. And not just life above, but the life below. Gardeners often say their plants seem happier in healthy soil. It's true. The network is alive. The roots feel the difference. You, too, are part of networks you cannot see. Your body hosts microbial partnerships. Your thoughts ripple through social and emotional webs. Your actions, even gentle ones, echo what you give returns. What you support strengthens, what you neglect fades. The forest teaches this, not in slogans, but in silence. In a world that rewards the loudest, the fungal network reminds you the strongest support systems are often the quietest. The deepest connections ask for no recognition. They simply hold, so next time you walk beneath trees, pause. The leaves may dance above, but the real conversation happens below. Not in words, but in minerals. Not in noise, but in flow. And somewhere, down there, a hypha touches a root, and a tree listens, and a message begins its journey. The forest is never truly still. And what message is carried now? Not of nourishment, but of defense, of protection, of alarm, of quiet sentinels at work. Next, we meet the bacteria that don't feed, but shield, who protects you without you ever needing to ask. You walk across a forest floor, soft with pine needles, quiet with age. The air is still. The canopy above filters the sunlight into fragments, little slices of gold between branches. But underneath you, unseen and unheard, a war is always waiting to begin. And more often than not, it is one before you ever know a battle took place, in the dark places beneath the surface. Life is not passive. It is watchful. Here, in the thin spaces between grains of soil, lives an entire immune system, not for you, but for the forest. And at its core are tiny sentinels, soil bacteria. You might think of bacteria as invaders, as the harbingers of illness or the carriers of contagion. But in this world, it is bacteria who stand guard. It is bacteria who push back against disease. And it is bacteria who build invisible walls between a healthy forest and the chaos. Just beyond, down where roots stretch and curl, there are quiet architects of defense. They do not raise alarms. They do not have mouths or eyes. They don't move in crowds, but they live in colonies. And when danger comes, a fungal blight, a parasitic worm, a pathogenic rival, they do what they have done for millions of years. They hold their ground. Some of them build shields, biofilms. They're called thin, sticky films made from sugars and proteins that form like armor around root tips, bark fragments, or even other microbes. These films seal off vulnerable places, wrapping cells in moisture and resistance. They stop bad actors from getting too close. They create a soft, invisible wall. Others take a more direct approach. They produce antibiotics, real ones. Penicillin was first found in mold. Yes, but soil bacteria have their own arsenal. Streptomyces, for example, is a genus of bacteria that lives in dirt and smells faintly sweet, like wet earth after rain. This humble microbe has given us more than 2/3 of the antibiotics we use in modern medicine. Why? 'Cause it had to survive in the crowded world beneath the surface. Bacteria compete not just with fungi and protozoa, but with each other. And so, they create compounds that kill or weaken their neighbors. But in doing so, they also protect. They limit the spread of diseases in the soil. They keep the ecosystem from tipping into imbalance. Imagine a field after harvest. The soil is bare, the roots are gone, and the wind blows freely across the open ground. But beneath it all, in the thin seams of moisture and clay, bacteria are still there, preparing, waiting, watching. And when a new seed is planted, when a new root dares to reach down, they go to work, colonizing the root tip, forming protective mats, establishing zones where harmful fungi cannot grow. It's not always a war. Sometimes protection is about boundaries. It's about presence. A healthy bacterial community crowds out pathogens simply by being there. It takes up space, uses available nutrients, and leaves nothing for opportunists. It's the microbial equivalent of a neighborhood watch. Other bacteria signal to the plant itself. Some emit volatile compounds that tell roots to thicken their walls or activate certain genes. It's a kind of microbial whisper, a message pass from soil to root, saying, "Prepare." Sometimes these messages even travel upward. The plant responds not just locally, but systemically. Leaves may alter their chemistry. Flowers may change the timing of their bloom. The whole organism adjusts in response to what the soil bacteria sense first. And so, the forest is not merely protected from the top down with bark and thorns and waxy leaves. It is defended from the bottom up by creatures you cannot see. Pause for a moment. Think of that. Every time a new tree grows tall, its life begins not just in light, but in darkness. Its survival depends not only on its trunk and canopy, but on the alliances it forms with the earth beneath. These alliances are microbial, protective, ancient. Some bacteria do more than defend. They teach, like immune tutors. They help plants build tolerance, training their systems not to overreact, not to treat every microbe as an enemy. Because in life, too much defense can be as harmful as none at all. This is something your own immune system learns in childhood, and forests learn it too. Take the rhizosphere, the thin zone of soil that surrounds a root. It is a microbial metropolis, okay? In it lie both the protectors and the potential invaders. But if the balance is right, the protectors win. K's cytophores, molecules that bind to iron more tightly than fungi can. K sequester key nutrients, starving pathogens of their needs, and they fill the air with tiny messages, chemical pings and pulses that let everyone know who's in charge. Bacteria don't need language, but they still communicate. They do it through quorum sensing, a system where microbes measure their own density by releasing signaling molecules. When there are enough of them in one place, a threshold is crossed. Then, together, they change their behavior. Sometimes they glow. Sometimes they form biofilms. Sometimes they begin producing antibiotics en masse. It's as though they wait until they know they are not alone, and then they act in concert. Not individually strong, but collectively unstoppable. Forests depend on this orchestration. Without it, the soil would fall to infection, roots would rot, disease would travel unchecked. But with these bacterial networks in place, the forest stays resilient. It doesn't mean everything is safe. Forests still burn, trees still fall, but often their fall is not due to what lives beneath. It is due to what rains down from above: acid rain, pesticides, pollutants, the very things that disrupt the soil's balance. Because these bacteria, while strong, are also vulnerable. A single layer of herbicide, a flood of synthetic fertilizer, or the compaction from heavy machines, and their equilibrium is gone. Their communication lines break. Their alliances weaken, and then the protectors retreat. When they do, pathogens step in. And so, protecting the forest means protecting the soil, which means protecting the bacteria that do the protecting. There are ways to help. Compost, for one. Mulch, organic matter, avoiding overtilling. These are gentle acts, but they echo loudly beneath the surface. They say, "You are safe. You can return. You are needed here." And the bacteria listen. You can feel it sometimes in a garden that suddenly blooms after a season of stillness, in a field where life returns, in a forest where, after the logging stops, the moss comes back. These are not just stories of plants. They are stories of bacteria, of guardians coming home. In this way, the forest teaches you something you might forget. Not all strength is loud. Not all protection looks like armor. Sometimes it is soft, invisible, uncelebrated, and yet it changes everything. There are parts of your life like this to people, habits, instincts that guard your peace without asking for credit. They are not flashy. They are not dramatic, but they are there, holding the line. Like bacteria in soil. And maybe that's why walking in the woods can feel so comforting, because you are stepping across a world where defense does not mean aggression. It means balance, presence, quiet readiness, even as you stand still. The soil is doing its work, preparing, waiting, holding space for what comes next. And what comes next is the continuation of that. Balance, the carbon that cycles in and out, the breath of the forest, the eternal dance of give and take. Asterisk, what balance lies between holding on and letting go? Letting go. Their defenses are not loud, but deliberate. In the space between root and soil, that soft, shaded border called the rhizosphere, a kind of invisible patrol watches over the growing world. You cannot see it, but it is there. A biofilm, no, thicker than a thought. A colony of guardians, no larger than a memory dot. Here, soil bacteria do more than feed the forest. Some become its shields. They produce compounds, not unlike antibiotics, though they don't call them that. They are chemical whispers, meant to discourage intruders, not spark war. They inhibit the growth of fungi that cause rot. They make the soil hostile to invaders, but gentle to those who belong. It is a selective protection, wise, discerning, ancient, in the quiet, communicate in molecules. If a plant root exudes distress, sugars shifted in shape by stress, the microbes nearby read the signal. Some respond by strengthening their numbers. Some shift their chemical strategy. Some simply wait, choosing stillness over fight. Their power is not violence. It's crowding. When protective bacteria settle in, they form layers, dense, living tapestries on root surfaces. They take up space, use the available nutrients, leave no room for the bad actors to take hold. This is called competitive exclusion, a kind of silent standoff. Whoever arrives first writes the rules. You may have done this yourself without realizing, filling your day with what nourishes so that what depletes has no room to grow. Bacteria near roots don't just crowd, they prepare. Some signal to the plant, priming its immune system like a gentle reminder. Others send hormones into the root, encouraging resilience. Together, the plant and its microbial guardians create an alliance of vigilance. Neither one panics, but both stay ready. They operate in loops, not lines. In some forests, scientists have found that when one tree is stressed, its roots send signals, not just to fungi, but to bacteria. The microbial community shifts slightly in response. It begins manufacturing compounds that deter specific pathogens. Protection here is not a product. It is a process, a relationship. The soil is full of such relationships. There are bacteria that protect seeds, wrapping them before they sprout. There are those that live inside stems and leaves, entering through roots and traveling like trusted guests. These endophytes become internal shields, quiet companions inside the plant body itself. They do not take over, adapt. Some stay dormant until the plant is wounded. Some only activate when drought sets in. Others emerge when disease threatens, becoming active just long enough to help, and then fading back into quietude. Their help is conditional, responsive, not unlike the support you offer to someone you love, without needing to be asked. But even protectors need protection. Bacteria in soil face their own predators, protozoa, nematodes, bacteriophages, and yet many survive. Some coat themselves in slime. Some live in cooperative colonies that regenerate quickly. Some embed themselves in deeper pockets of the soil, far from the dangers of sunlight and surface. In this hidden war, this soft, daily negotiation, balance is never broken by noise. It is kept by attention, and it is this attention, microscopic, constant, tireless, that holds up entire forests, because protection doesn't begin with danger. It begins with awareness, and bacteria are aware. They detect changes in temperature, moisture, pH, chemical trace. They respond in kind, not by fleeing, but by shifting, changing gene expression, adjusting behavior. They are, in some sense, soil's memory and intuition, wrapped in cells smaller than a grain of pollen dot in the forest. It remembers, through them, a tree struck by disease may not survive, but its bacterial allies may adapt. When the next seedling rises in the same patch of earth, the bacteria are already there, waiting, ready, trained. The memory of defense is stored in their DNA. You may have known something similar, recovering from pain, not because you forgot, but because something within you remembered how to resist. This is how forests avoid repeating their mistakes, through bacteria, through molecules, through inheritance that moves not only through seed and root, but through soil itself. Protection, then, is not always a barrier. Sometimes it is a foundation, and sometimes it is something even softer, like the readiness to begin again after loss, because the protectors do not stop when a leaf falls. They do not panic when bark splits or when drought slows the trees. Instead, begin a different kind of labor. They turn the fallen leaf into food. They transform decay into nourishment. They recycle. They decompose. And that is where the next rhythm begins, just beyond the edge of defense. The dance of carbon awaits. Beneath your feet, a quiet breath rises. It isn't wind, and it isn't yours, okay? It is the earth itself, exhaling slowly, invisibly, through the lungs of the soil. You might think of soil as something still, something motionless, but it is anything but. It moves, it breathes, it metabolizes, and at the center of its ancient rhythm is a single, restless element. Carbon. Carbon is the backbone of life. Not metaphorically, but literally. Every cell of your body is built from carbon atoms, arranged and rearranged in soft, invisible chains. Plants capture carbon from the air, animals consume it, and when life ends, carbon returns to the soil. But the soil does not simply receive, it transforms. Walk through a forest after a storm and you will see fallen branches, curled leaves, scattered bark. Each fragment is a story, a life that has run its course. But to the soil, these are beginnings, raw ingredients for a vast, underground kitchen where nothing is wasted and every molecule is prepared for its next role. It begins with a fall. A leaf, golden and curled, detaches from its branch and spins downward. It lands not with finality, but with purpose. Microbes gather, bacteria, fungi, tiny decomposers that do not mourn, but metabolize. They swarm silently, secreting enzymes that slice long carbon chains into manageable pieces. They do not eat the whole leaf at once. Digest in slow increments, breaking cellulose, chewing through lignin, dissolving waxy coatings. Some parts are too complex. They linger. Others are simple sugars, rapidly consumed, fueling the microbes. Breath, a breath that is not made with lungs, but with chemical energy, carbon in, carbon out. As these microbes feast, they release carbon dioxide, a gentle stream, molecule by molecule, rising from the soil back into the atmosphere. This is not waste, it is breath. It is the return of what once was, now transformed into something free. But not all carbon leaves. Some of it binds, some attaches to clay particles, settles into tight pores, gets woven into microbial bodies, or trapped in sticky biofilms. This is stable carbon, carbon that might stay underground for decades, centuries, even millennia. It is this stored carbon that matters to the climate, to the future of forests, to the rhythm of the earth's warming and cooling breath. And the microbes decide. They do not know it, key, but their activity, how fast they eat, how deep they burrow, how many enzymes they release, changes the balance of the planet. Their choices, made by instinct and chemistry, help determine whether a forest stores more carbon than it releases, or the other way around. They are the accountants of the earth's breath. But carbon does not only come from leaves and twigs. roots to feed the soil. A living plant sends out not just root hairs and anchor points, but exudates tiny droplets of sugar, amino acids, and organic compounds. This is generosity and strategy. These exudates attract bacteria, which cluster near the roots, forming a halo of microbial life that protects the plant, feeds on its offerings, and in return, brings nutrients closer to the root's grasp. And here too, carbon is traded, given, not just taken. The plant pushes carbon downward into the ground, not to bury it, but to invest it, to build relationships, to encourage the microbial allies that it needs to grow. The soil becomes an exchange floor. Carbon flows in from photosynthesis, from waste, from death. It flows out through respiration, decay, erosion, circles and loops, enters food chains, builds fungal networks, fuels microbial wars and alliances. It is never still, and as night falls over the forest, when all seems quiet, the soil remains busy. Bacteria do not sleep. They continue to work, digesting, recombining, stabilizing. The air above you may feel calm, but below, a quiet metabolism persists in a handful of forest soil. Billions of bacteria are at work. In that handful alone, more carbon may be processed in a day than your body processes in a week. It's not glamorous work. It's not fast, but it is sacred. Even animal droppings, deer scat, bird guano, the humble pellet from a squirrel's meal, become offerings to the soil. Okay? They bring nitrogen, phosphorus, and of course, carbon. The microbes do not judge the origin. To them, it is all fuel. Some microbes specialize in carbon-heavy compounds. They prefer oils, resins, complex polysaccharides. Others go for simpler meals. Some bacteria work in aerobic zones near the surface where oxygen is present. Others go deeper into the anaerobic dark where fermentation reigns. And in wetlands, where water covers the soil and oxygen is scarce, carbon follows a different path. Here, methane-producing bacteria, methanogens, dominate, digest slowly, and their breath is different. Not carbon dioxide, but methane, lighter, more potent, a gas that warms the atmosphere more quickly. Even here, the dance continues, slower, deeper, swamp-scented. Some carbon, held long in permafrost, or peat, remains frozen for centuries. But as the planet warms, this carbon begins to stir. Microbes awaken. The slow digestion resumes. What was stored begins to rise. Soil scientists watch this carefully. They measure carbon fluxes, the in and out, the give and take. Install chambers. Use infrared sensors. Track isotopes. Not to control the dance, but to listen to it. To understand how fast the music is playing and who is leading. Because the future of forest depends not only on the trees, but on what lives below. A dry soil, compacted and lifeless, stores less carbon. A healthy soil, rich in microbial life, can hold more. Compost, cover crops, no-till farming. These aren't just agricultural trends. They're invitations to the microbes. They say, come back, breathe, build. Even in your garden, the dance of carbon is underway. Each weed you pull, each compost layer you add, each moment of mulch, you are shaping the soil's breath. You are part of the choreography. And when you lie down at night, chest rising and falling, breath warm in the quiet, know that the soil beneath you is also breathing. Not with lungs, not in rhythm with your own, but with the patience that spans seasons, decades, even geological time. The carbon that once lived in a leaf now rests in a bacterial cell. That same carbon may soon be in a root, a worm, the air. It may circle back into a tree or drift skyward into tomorrow's clouds. Carbon is not fixed. It is a pilgrim. It moves with purpose, but not destination. Its journey is the story of every forest, every field, every breath, and The microbes, ancient and tireless, are its companions. They do not know that they shape the climate. They do not know that their chemistry holds the Earth's temperature in balance, but they do, in silence, in darkness, with every molecule they pass along. So tonight, as you sleep, the forest does not. It metabolizes. It remembers. It releases and retains, builds and breathes. Carbon flows like a river underground, and in that quiet current, another truth emerges that will carry us into the next thought, a thought about memory, resilience, and what the soil keeps even after storms have passed. What does the earth remember that we forget? We forget. The leaf falls, does not resist. It drifts slowly, carried by a sigh of wind, then lands gently on the forest floor. It lies still, but it is not finished. This is not the end of the leaf, only the beginning of its transformation. Under your feet, the soil receives it like an old friend. The veins of the leaf hold carbon captured sunlight, turned into sugar, turned into structure, turned into story. The tree that birthed it pulled this carbon from the air, turning invisible gas into the visible body of bark and branch. Now, the leaf returns what was borrowed. The soil accepts with quiet hunger. The dance of carbon begins not in drama, but in stillness. Bacteria wake in response to the arrival of this meal. Fungi stretch out. Their slender threads, tiny decomposers, some too small to name, begin their sacred labor. Carbon, the basic element of life, begins to move again. You live because of carbon. You are built from it. Your bones, your breath, your blood, all carry its signature. It moves from plant to animal, to air, to soil, and back again, in loops that never rest. In the forest, this dance happens every moment, though you rarely see it. Each time a squirrel chews a seed, each time a deer drops waste, each time a flower wilts or a pine needle browns, carbon shifts form. It is passed along like a whisper, like a shared memory, and beneath all of this, the soil keeps its rhythm. The bacteria in soil are experts in patience. They do not rush. They break down matter slowly, layer by layer. Complex molecules become simple. Sugars dissolve, proteins unwind, so walls collapse. What once was green and reaching becomes food again, not just for bacteria, but for the next generation of life. Some carbon escapes, breathed back into the air as carbon dioxide, a part of natural respiration. But not all of it leaves. Some carbon is stored. It lingers in the soil, bound to minerals, or hidden in the folds of humus, that dark, rich, organic matter formed over time. Here, carbon can stay for years, decades, centuries. This is how forests store breath. The trees above dance in the wind, but their stillness is made possible by the quiet storage below. Soil acts as a bank for carbon, absorbing what is offered, holding it gently in trust. But trust must be maintained. When the forest is disturbed by plow, by fire, by bulldozer, the dance is interrupted. The balance shifts. Carbon is released too quickly. What was slow and sacred becomes fast and fleeting. Suddenly, the forest breathes out too much, and the world warms, because carbon, when held in excess in the sky, captures heat. The same molecule that builds your body can also trap sunlight. And so, the forest, which once cooled the earth, can begin to warm it if its rhythms are disrupted. The bacteria in the soil know this. Though they do not think in words, they continue their work regardless of politics or policy. They digest what falls. They bind carbon into structure. They breathe when needed, and rest when the air grows still. They are the unspoken stewards of the planet's breath, and they do not work alone. Roots help, Tree roots exude sugar-rich compounds into the soil, feeding bacterial communities in exchange for nutrients. This cooperation, this sharing, deepens the soil's ability to store carbon. The more life in the soil, the more carbon it can hold. It is a web of generosity. Even earthworms, those soft-bodied engineers, play a role. They tunnel, they mix air and soil, helping bacteria access what they need. The castings are rich in organic matter, perfect for holding carbon. Every creature, no matter how small, contributes, but balance remains fragile. Too much water and oxygen disappears, slowing decomposition. Too little water and microbes dry out, halting the cycle. The climate, the canopy, the microbes, the seasons, all must dance together. You can think of it like music. Carbon moves in tempo. There are crescendos in autumn when leaves fall. There are softer verses in winter when cold slows decay. And always, beneath it all, the bass line, bacteria humming, fungi threading, roots reaching. It is an orchestra without a conductor, and yet the harmony persists until it doesn't. In cities, soil is compacted, hard, lifeless, sealed, under asphalt. In fields plowed too often, the topsoil erodes, and with it, the carbon disappears. In places where forests once stood, now cleared, the soil grows thin, carbon exhaled. But healing is possible. A forest regrown, a meadow restored, a field covered in clover instead of left bare. All invite the return of the carbon dance. Microbes arrive, worms return. The breath of the earth slows again, steadies, sinks. You don't have to see it to believe it. Sometimes, the most powerful movements are the ones invisible to the eye. The soft decomposition of a fallen log, the fermentation beneath mulch, the hidden warmth in compost piles. These are acts of transformation. Carbon is neither good nor bad. It simply moves. It becomes form, then gas, then form again. It builds and breaks, gives and receives. Its cycle is ancient, yet always new. And in this cycle, soil is not passive. It is alive. It makes choices, not with thought, but with balance. It decides what to keep, what to release. It adjusts to drought, to flame. It stores memory in the molecules it holds. In this way, soil becomes a kind of storyteller. It carries the history of the land in layers, in colors, and scents. A single handful may hold centuries of breath. A footprint may rest upon 1,000 years of carbon's journey, and still it continues. Even as you sleep, the soil does not. Carbon moves beneath you, quietly, rhythmically, faithfully. It is broken, shared, rebuilt. It is held in trust, or offered back to sky. And so you breathe, unaware that your exhale may one day become part of the soil's song. The trees you walk beneath, the flowers you admire, the fruits you taste, all shaped by this invisible rhythm. The dance of carbon is not beneath the forest floor. It is within you too. Your body returns carbon with every breath, every cell shed, every farewell. And one day, you too will return to the soil, not as loss, but as gift. The forest welcomes all things in time, and the bacteria will be there, still working, still digesting, still turning endings into beginnings, because the dance of carbon is not a straight line. It is a circle, a spiral, a rhythm that asks no permission, but gives endlessly as long as the soil is allowed to live. And now, as you lie quietly, imagine the warmth beneath your feet, not from fire, but from life, a pulse in the dirt, a breath held in root and rot, a carbon rhythm, slow, deep, sacred. And just as carbon travels in spirals, memory does too. You walk through a forest and think it began with a tree. But trees are not the beginning. They are the result. Beneath their bark and towering branches is a foundation older, quieter, and deeper than anything you see above. The forest does not start with green. It starts with what cannot be seen, the soil, and within it, the tiniest lives. Beneath your every step, there is a world, layered, woven, breathing in darkness. The first rain to touch a forest does not fall on leaves. It seeps into the ground, and there, in a place that seems still and forgotten, the first notes of the forest song begin. Microbes, visible and humble, prepare the stage long before the seed arrives. Bacteria soften the soil. Fungi stretch their threads. They break down stone into mineral. They digest death into nutrients. And slowly, quietly, they build a place where something taller might one day grow. It starts with one patch of living soil, not just wet or fertile, but alive, steaming with millions in a single spoonful. Some of these microbes are generalists, happy to feed on anything. Others are specialists, whispering their skills into the ecosystem, breaking down cellulose, fixing nitrogen, releasing phosphorus. Together, they create balance, not by design, but by persistence. You may picture soil as passive, something you dig, something that holds, but it is not a container. It is a maker, factory of breath and decay, of digestion and renewal. Without this microbial symphony, there is no humus, no richness, no invitation for roots to stay. Long before roots arrive, the soil must signal. It must say, I am ready. This readiness comes not from nutrients alone, but from communication. Microbes exude signals, chemical invitations, gentle markers of welcome. Some of these attract fungi, some prepare for nitrogen fixers, and some simply shape the pH and moisture in ways that say something can grow here. Then, one day, a seed arrives, carried by wind, dropped by a bird, left behind by a forgotten hand. It rests lightly, and before it unfurls toward the sky, it reaches downward. Its root taps into the microbial world, asking a question with enzymes and sugars. Are you there? The bacteria answer. They gather near the root tip, drawn by sweet exudates. They build a sheath of allies, a living biofilm of support. And if the right microbes are present, something special begins. The seed germinates. The root divides. The forest begins, not with photosynthesis, but with trust. Not with sunshine, but with partnership. As the seedling rises, it is still deeply dependent on what lies below. Without nitrogen, it cannot make proteins. Without phosphorus, it cannot store energy. Without water, drawn from the matrix of soil, it cannot stand. And all of this, every atom, every molecule, comes not from the air, but from the ancient, living dust beneath it. The forest's strength does not lie in the trunk. It lies in the invisible hand that lifts the trunk upward. Even mature trees, tall, wise, gnarled, still lean on their microbial friends. They continue to feed the soil with sugars through their roots. It's a constant exchange. Carbon for nutrients, sweetness for support. It is not charity. It is not dependence. It is reciprocity, old as the forest itself. In degraded lands where soil has been stripped, trees refuse to grow. It's not because there is no rain or sun or space, but because the microbes are gone. The symphony has been silenced. And without music, the forest does not rise. In restoration ecology, scientists know this well. Before replanting trees, they try to replant life in the soil. Compost, fungal inoculants, cover crops that awaken slumbering bacteria. And only then, only after the soil begins to hum again, do they place seeds in the ground. You might think of forest as born from light. They are also born from shadow, from the dark work of decay, from the labor of bacteria and fungi who turn waste into wealth. Even fire is not the end. A burned forest, scorched and blackened, looks dead. But deep below, in pockets of heteroresistant soil, the microbes stir. They begin again. They break the charcoal into molecules. They unlock trapped minerals that whispered to seeds hidden in cones or buried by animals. You may come now. The world is ready. A forest does not grow once. It grows in cycles. It rises and falls and rises again, each time born from the microbes who never stopped working. Sometimes old trees fall, not from age, but from below. Their microbial partners fade, soil compacts, oxygen wanes, and the tree, unable to feed or anchor, slowly surrenders. Its fall is not a failure. It is food. The trunk feeds fungi. The fungi feeds bacteria. And the circle begins once more. In permaculture and regenerative farming, people mimic these patterns. They do not plant in bare soil. They first feed the microbes with compost, with mulch, with patience, because they know if you want fruit, you must first feed what lies below. You do not grow plants, you grow soil, and the soil grows everything else in your own life. What are your microbes? What invisible processes support your visible strength? Perhaps your soil is sleep, or silence, or forgiveness. Perhaps what you build above depends entirely on what you nurture below. There is a forest inside you, not of trees, but of dreams, of habits, of love, and it too begins in silence. Spaces no one else sees, in rituals of care, of rest, of invisible growth. The next time you walk in a forest, pause. Feel the ground beneath you, not just as something that holds you, but something that breathes, that moves. It waits for the next seed. Forests begin with microbes, and so do you. Your beginnings may be quiet, but they are alive. They are waiting for light, and when the conditions are right, when the ground is fed, the roots are brave. What rises might surprise even you, because even in a single handful of soil, there are more organisms than people who have ever lived, and in their quiet work, entire worlds begin, even as forests rise. Something deeper remains beneath, storing carbon, balancing gases, shaping air. The very breath of the planet begins here, and so we turn next to this breath, to the delicate balance between soil and sky, to the carbon it keeps, and the clock it turns, to the question, what happens when the smallest lives hold the key to our largest future? The earth does not tick like a watch. It breathes like a sleeping giant. And if you want to know how fast it's breathing, or whether it stirs in fever or peace, you must look down, not at the trees, not at the clouds, but at the soil beneath. Your every step, carbon lies sleeping. It's not fossilized in stone, not lost in time, but gently held in the dark weave of humus and root and microbial thread. Most people think of carbon as a gas, a problem in the sky, a number on a chart. But carbon is also a memory of what was once alive, a leaf, a root, a beetle, broken down, pressed deep, stored in soil by hands too small to see. In fact, the world's soils contain more carbon than all the plants and the atmosphere combined. More than forests, more than oceans, more than fossil fuels, still waiting to be burned. It is an ancient library, and the microbes are its keepers. They write in invisible ink, recording decay and regrowth, fire and rain. And with every microbial sigh, carbon is either tucked away or let go. This rhythm is not random. It's shaped by life, by the roots that feed the microbes, by the fungi that trade sugars for minerals, by the worms that churn the earth, burying organic matter deep where it can rest for decades, for centuries or longer. Healthy soil is a vault. It locks carbon in its folds, not by force, but by balance. When there is life above, diverse, rooted, slow growing, there is storage below. But disturb the balance and the vault creaks open. Plow the soil, burn the forest, leave the ground bare and hungry. And the microbes, starved of food and air, shift their role. They begin to release. Carbon, once held in trust, rises as CO. The breath of the earth becomes more frantic. The sleeping giant starts to stir. This is the hidden engine of the climate clock. Not just what we burn, but what we disturb. Soil is not passive. It responds to temperature, to moisture, to what we grow and how we grow it. Warming changes everything. As the planet heats, microbial communities change their pace. Faster metabolism, faster digestion, faster release. What took centuries to store can be exhaled in seasons. Permafrost is thawing. Tundra soils, once locked tight, are breathing again. But this breath is not renewal. It is a slow exhale of methane and carbon dioxide, long hidden. The lungs of the north are reversing. Even in temperate zones, the change is visible. Dry soils lose their sponge-like grip. Flooded soils suffocate. Farmed soils, tilled, sprayed, left bare, can no longer hold what they once could. Yet still, hope stirs, because just as soil can lose carbon, it can also gain it, quickly, with intention, with care. This is the promise of regenerative agriculture, of cover crops and no-till fields, of compost and managed grazing. Practices that feed the microbes, build structure, and pull carbon down. With every root that grows deep and slow, with every leaf that falls and stays, the soil draws a longer breath, not shallow and hurried, but grounded and still. Even cities can play a part. Urban soils in parks, gardens, tree pits can store carbon too. Not as much as forests, but enough to matter, enough to remind us that healing can begin anywhere. The climate clock is not just ticking, it is asking, where will the next second be stored? Bacteria and fungi don't know policy. They don't read reports or attend summits, but they respond to warmth, to rain, to roots, to how we treat the land. They are the gears inside the clock, turning quietly till we notice they are driving the whole machine. Some scientists call this the soil carbon feedback loop. More warming releases more carbon, causes more warming, a spiral. But it doesn't have to spin downward. There are ways to turn it the other direction, to feed instead of extract, to listen instead of forget. What if we treated soil like a partner, not a floor? What if we remembered that the world's breath begins below our feet? Every forest you've ever walked through is a story of soil, a tie, not just its nutrients, but its choices. The soil decides when a tree can stand, when a prairie can rise, when a wetland can hold, and the soil remembers fire, flood, drought, chemicals, time, but it also forgives. It rebuilds, slowly, microbe by microbe. Layer by layer, you can hear the breath of the earth in a compost pile. Feel its heat, smell its richness, its carbon being caught, not cast. You can see it in dark, crumbly loam, where roots glide easily, and water lingers just long enough. The planet is not asking for silence, it's asking for rhythm, and soil holds the beat. It may never make headlines, it may never shout, but it hums, soft, low, constant, a reminder that the largest systems often rest in the smallest hands. And if you close your eyes, you might feel it under you now, not dead, not static, but working. What if the climate isn't a war to be won, but a breath to be balanced? And what if it starts not with a machine, but with a microbe? In the end, soil may be our most ancient and faithful ally. It has been here since the first moss crept onto rock, Kas, since the first roots pierced the crust, Ka, since the first decay became food, and still it waits to be fed, to be protected, to be remembered, because the climate clock does not hang in the sky. It sleeps in the ground, okay? And its ticking grows louder each time the soil is asked to do more than it can bear. So the question is no longer when. It is where will you stand when the breath deepens? Where will you walk, and what will stir beneath your step? Where does healing begin, if not in the ground beneath your feet? And if the soil can remember and still grow again, what else might be rebuilt from the quiet? Now, let's go deeper still. to the moments when soil breaks, yet chooses to heal, to the tender acts of restoration, where life returns to places we thought were lost, and the earth breathes again. There is a softness in the earth that you do not always feel, but it is there beneath the soles of your shoes, beneath sidewalks and stone, beneath roots and rivers and fields that stretch like sighs. The ground remembers every step, not because it records your name, not because it holds your weight, but because each step you take presses into a living fabric, woven from millions of lives. The soil beneath your foot is not still, even when you pause, even when you sleep. It breathes, it stirs, it sings in frequencies you do not hear. You may think of the world as split, the green above and the brown below, the leaf and the loam, the visible and the hidden. But there is no such divide. There never was. The life beneath every step is the same life that grows upward. Trees are not built from wood alone. They are built from exchange. In the silence below, roots stretch like fingers into shadow. They do not search blindly. They feel. They communicate, send out sugars, a sweetness, a gift, not to nourish themselves, but to call. And what answers? It's microbes, tiny lives, ancient and unseen. Some are bacteria, some fungi, some so small, so strange, they belong to no familiar kingdom at all. They gather near the roots like fireflies to warmth. They carry with them minerals, nitrogen, iron, zinc. They break down stone into meal. They soften clay. They defend. They ask for nothing but sugar, a quiet trade, a silent friendship. This is not the wilderness. This is not chaos. This is a community, old as the first fern that reached toward light. It does not require management. It only requires protection. And in this way, every field you see, every forest that hums in green, every garden is not grown. It is co-created, the life beneath. Every step is a partner in everything that rises. Even the air you breathe can part from them, because the soil's microbes feed the plants that open their stomata to the sky, and those leaves, in turn, exhale oxygen into your chest. So when you inhale a memory of the ground, and when you exhale, somewhere a root responds. This is the quiet circuit of life. It does not shout, it does not rush. It loops endlessly, gracefully, unobserved, and yet it is the reason you eat, the reason you breathe, the reason your bones hold calcium, your blood carries iron, your skin tastes the sun. The microbes in soil do not know your name. They have shaped your life, cell by cell. Even the scent of rain on dry earth, that sweet, earthy perfume, is a gift from them. A molecule called geosmin, made by actinobacteria when the ground is thirsty, rising into the air like a memory you didn't know you missed. We call it petrichor, but it is a kind of greeting. The soil, whispering upward, I am here. And when you stand above it, breathing that air, you are not separate. You are part of the system. Your steps compress the ground, but also return skin cells, spilled water, dropped crumbs, shed hair. You are always giving back, even when you don't mean to. Even the dead return when something dies above ground. A leaf, an animal, a life. The soil does not judge. It welcomes, it processes, integrates. There is no such thing as waste here, only redistribution. Bones become calcium for the next generation of roots. Flesh becomes food for nematodes. Old bark becomes shelter. Everything finds use. Nothing is lost. The soil is not a graveyard. It is a womb. It does not hold death. It holds the possibility of again. And so, when you walk on forest trails, or garden paths, or even city pavement, you are walking not on silence, but on symphony. Each square meter of healthy soil holds over 1 billion bacteria, hundreds of thousands of fungi, worms, insects, larvae, mites, all working, digesting, building structure, passing messages, creating tunnels for water and roots to flow. They are engineers. They are pharmacists. They are memory keepers. Some store DNA fragments of long-gone plants. Some lie dormant for decades, waiting for the right signal, only awaken after fire. And they are not alone. Beneath every step, a language is spoken, not in words, but in chemical pulses, electrical flickers, smells, signals, pH changes, and pressure gradients. The soil is talking to itself. The roots are listening. The microbes are replying, and the fungi carry messages from one plant to another, even across species, even across seasons. If a tree is sick, others will know. A seedling needs support. Older roots may send carbon. This is not fantasy. It is measurable. It is repeatable. It is real, and it is happening now, under your chair, beneath your bed, outside your door. The earth never stops. Even at night, especially at night, the soil pulses with slow activity. Temperature shifts, moisture changes, fungal filaments extend, bacteria divide, worms reshape the underground architecture, and in these motions, quiet, patient, unseen, the next cycle is prepared. Tomorrow's seed will fall on today's labor. Tomorrow's root will drink from today's decay. So when you wake in the morning, open your window and see the leaves trembling in wind, know this: they are trembling on branches, fed by trunks, fed by roots, fed by bacteria that hummed through the night beneath the ground beneath your feet. And perhaps, in that moment, you will feel something rare, a sense of being held, not by arms, but by systems older than language, by life too small to see, by partnerships that began long before humans wrote them down. This is not a story of plants, This is a story of patience, of cycles, of nourishment returned, in skid. It is a story of healing, slow, certain, shared. So the next time you walk, pause, look down, close your eyes. Imagine what breathes below. Imagine the cities, the highways, the whispers. Imagine the unseen hands, building tomorrow from yesterday's dust. And ask yourself what might grow because of what lived in silence today.